All right, let's talk about the New Orleans Saints, who go out and I thought had a really strong draft. A couple of surprises, a couple of picks that I'm not a huge fan of, but a lot of picks that I think were just great by the Saints. Let's start off with Talise Fuaga, which leading up to the draft, Saints fans and I kind of had these arguments for a while of sometimes in my mock drafts, I wouldn't give them a tackle. And Saints fans would say, have you seen our tackle situation? Like Trevor Penning has struggled to stay healthy and hasn't looked great when he's been out there. Like we need a tackle. What are you doing not giving us a tackle? My argument was, well, I want to. Sometimes there's better players on the board. I'd rather have a better player. I don't always solely draft for need, and I think there were other needs. The Saints get a tackle, and he's probably one of the best players on the board at that point. So it worked out perfectly for them, is a long story short. This is a great job to get Talise Fuaga. Now, there's been some question about is he a tackle or a guard. I think they could use a guard as well, though. So, hey, let's say Trevor Penning, in training camp looks fully healthy and he looks awesome. He's put it all together. He's been great. Well, now you can have Fuaga bounce into guard. Or maybe you want Fuaga to be tackle and move Penning to guard. Like, for whatever reason, people will say, oh, well, Fuaga might be a guard, so that's a negative. I fully disagree. I think having positional versatility is a large positive for me personally. So I think they'll try him at tackle, see how it works. I think he's going to be a really good player. He was someone who I think was maybe an underrated prospect. Then you have Kool-Aid McKinstry, who, if you follow this channel, I thought was a super underrated player. He's such a smart player, and in a Dennis Allen's scheme, which Dennis Allen's still there, despite what some people maybe wanted. I think this is great. Now, they didn't need a corner, and this is again. Smart teams will sometimes draft a player even if it's not their biggest need, because you got Marshawn Lattimore, you have Paulson Adebo, they probably use another corner, let's be honest. So I guess maybe you need a corner. You don't need a corner in terms of like you have two corners, but you need a corner in terms of teams need more than two corners. You know what I mean? Because you have obviously more than just two corners play. So I think the question is exactly where you have him play and all of that stuff, which will be, I'm sure Saints fans have already figured out exactly how they would do it. But either way, I think just getting a player who, again, I think should have been drafted in the first round here at pick 41, projected to go 26. Realized I forgot to set up what the chart is. The chart next to me, number all the way to the left is when they were drafted, next number over when they were projected to be drafted, and then the player name and the position. So for Spencer Rattler, he was drafted 150th. This was the, wait, what's going on here? Pick, I think. Well, in fairness, I think a lot of people thought Rattler would go earlier. He was kind of considered like this, an early third-round prospect is what he was projected to go. I think part of what happened was kind of every team that we were like, okay, are they going to go quarterback or not, did go quarterback early on, and then the Raiders seemingly were just okay to not go quarterback. So it was going to kind of be a team that, values the backup position that was going to do this, and that ends up being the Saints, who are willing to take a chance on Spencer Rattler, who, again, if you're someone who hasn't followed Rattler closely, was at one point, I think when people did like way too early mock drafts for like a future year, he was like number one on some of those, but then had a bad year, ended up not coming out of college right away, stayed in college for a little longer, and showed some flashes enough to eventually be kind of considered as like, hey, this guy has maybe some potential to be like a strong backup, is how a lot of people view him, including myself. So, for Derek Carr, who isn't the youngest quarterback, maybe there is a plan B now if he does, if he does fall off a cliff. It's good to have that. But I think they're drafting him to hopefully get 4 years of good backup production, and I think he should probably do that for them. So they did just draft Jake Haener. Makes me wonder if they didn't love what they see from Jake Haener. They also have Kellen Mond and Nathan Peterman in their quarterback room. I'm not sure either one of those guys are something you feel great about being a backup. So yeah, I wouldn't read too much into it. I think that Rattler is simply a backup. And Bub Means, I also think they're drafting kind of just to be a contributor, someone who should be able to come in and play, probably not someone who's going to come in and be a every down starter type player, someone who is, a wide receiver out of Pittsburgh who, measurables are fine. The, athleticism is fine. And it's kind of just, sometimes you also have the three different prospects at this point, right? Once you get to like 170, you either get the guy who is this great athlete who just doesn't have any production. You have the guy who has a ton of production but just isn't a very good athlete. Then you have the guy who has some production and is, a quality athlete, but not great at either. The Bub Means is the final one, and I think he should be able to be an effective player for the Saints, but just probably more of a role player than a star. We then go to, and also worth mentioning, was a bit of a reach on the consensus big board for, however much that matters for you. Then we have Jalen Ford, who is a linebacker out of Texas, who is interesting. 6'2", 240 pounds. He is someone that I think people feel as though he's someone who had to do some research reading up about, as I tend to have to do when making these videos. Not everyone late in these rounds I've done a full deep dive on, but it's someone who definitely can sometimes be late to making his reads and kind of is a little bit late with the instincts side of things. He has, again, good enough athleticism and really good size for a linebacker position, just maybe not quite the, maybe he just needs a couple years in an NFL system to fully reach his potential. But again, someone who could come in and be a contributor, right? So definitely interesting there. We then have, two more draft picks to talk about, two linemen, and they're both interesting. So Christian Boyd and Josiah Izerim are the two guys. Don't think I said all those names right, but I'm doing my best here. Boyd out of Northern Iowa and Izerim out of Eastern Kentucky. So both smaller schools that maybe aren't getting the highest competition, but they both performed very well against those lower levels of competition. So there's always a projection, because it's like, there's already so much question marks of how will your game translate to the NFL level when we see you against good college players. But what about against, not so good college players? It's just that added layer of projection. I think Boyd was projected to go a little bit higher. In fact, he was projected to go over 100 spots higher. Ezerim was the 303rd rated prospect, and there's only, a little over 250 guys that get drafted. But part of why people like Boyd a decent amount at the interior defensive line position as well is he has some of the intangibles, some of the tangibles, I should say, some of the physical traits that you also like to see. So that's, I think really two strong picks there at the end there by the Saints. So yeah, as a whole, Fuaga and McKinstry, I think, are really good picks. You could argue Rattler wasn't totally necessary, but I don't hate it. Backup quarterbacks matter. Pick 150. He has potential for more. If you're going to draft one of the non-top 6 quarterbacks, he would be the guy to do it with, in my opinion. So yeah, no real issue there. Thought they had a couple of really interesting flyers, and even Means and Ford are like solid, what should be good depth pieces. So they added some depth and a couple of potential really strong starters on top of it. Hard to really have too many notes with what the Saints did. I think a very good, strong draft here by New Orleans. That's what I think. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from y'all. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.